All right, as of today, Bitcoin looks to be preparing for a giant summer rally that maybe a lot of people aren't expecting. I want to show you two or three key things I'm watching on the Bitcoin chart, specifically how Bitcoin is following the M2 Global Liquidity Index into this rally, how it's playing with the 30-week moving average, which I think is very important compared to how I trade and invest in cryptocurrencies. And then also, does this make Bitcoin riskier? I think this is the sign that we need to see right here on the chart to see that Bitcoin's still bullish for 2025, no matter what the tariffs are causing, no matter what the recession is causing, no matter what the media is saying and all the fear. I think there are still a lot of reasons to be bullish, especially when we have Bitcoin breaking above a few key levels. So I want to show you what those are. This is going to have trickle down effects to your favorite altcoin, to Cardano native tokens, and to all of that across the whole crypto ecosystem. If Bitcoin can keep rallying like it's rallying, I don't think it would be a shocker to see, 3 months of Bitcoin price continuation upwards, possibly breaking out of the old all-time high into a very new all-time high, which would be very bullish for the crypto ecosystem, especially altcoins as well. So let me show you here what we have going on. The biggest thing happening this week is this move made by Bitcoin, up about 7% in total, but this is what we've been watching for quite a while. We have the 30-week and the 40-week moving average, and you can see over a very long time frame, these are the moving averages that a lot of stocks and cryptos will hold on to. A lot of people like 50, a lot of people like 100, 150, 200-day moving averages. This is one that I've gravitated towards, the 30 and 40-week moving average, and you can see if you simply would have bought Bitcoin down here, as it got above those moving averages, you would be in about 600% profit over just like 2 years. And so it's really magnificent what these moving averages can do. And as long as Bitcoin stays above them, you can see this is the 2021 cycle, as long as Bitcoin stays above them and is not getting rejected like it did right here, you can see how clean this is. Bitcoin's above that 30-week moving average. It chops in here, but the moment it gets rejected, that's when it's game over. You can see the same thing in 2017. Look at this rise through the moving average for all of the bull market. Bitcoin comes down, chops a little bit. That's your stage 3. And then it has this neckline, which it breaks off of. That is the downfall of that cycle. And so what I'm looking at today is, can Bitcoin maintain the moving averages? And this week is confirming that with a 7 to 8% move to the upside, where Bitcoin is trying to break out of this downwards trend and make a new, go counter trend and maybe put in a new all-time high. As Bitcoin's coming above the 30-week moving average, this is more bullish potential that we are still not at the stage 3 distribution phase of this cycle. We could still be in the stage 2 phase, which I definitely believe that we are. I definitely believe a lot of altcoins have not gotten the moves that they wanted to get, and that many people wanted them to get, which would mean that this price action is putting us back into a late stage 2 for Bitcoin, and there's still some growth to be had. You can assign any narrative as to why this is happening, but the key thing is that Bitcoin is getting back above the 30-week moving average, which is very bullish for price. And if we want price to keep going up, it wants to stay above the 30-week moving average. It never even actually fully got below the 40-week moving average here, and it only wicked down but came right back up, which I think is a very bullish sign. We have not seen a confirmation close below the 40-week, which is keeping Bitcoin very bullish. Now, how is this happening? You might be wondering, why is this happening when there's a lot of fear, a lot of media, a lot of recession, a lot of tariff, a lot of uncertainty? And there's one thing I want to show you that we've been talking about on this channel for a little bit. One of my friends here on Twitter, Colin Talks Crypto, has done a very good analysis on what we're seeing here in the M2 versus Bitcoin. And there's a couple ways you can go about it. You can put a 78-day offset, 108-day offset. Some people are using 80 days. Some people are using 6 weeks. Some people are using 30 days. And actually, over the cycles of Bitcoin, it's changed slightly. And so it's not always going to be these same numbers. But over the past 2 years, 70 days or 100 days have been very good indicators of where Bitcoin is headed based on global M2. If we just take this 108-day one right here, you can see how Bitcoin is actually really following M2. And you can see it's been doing it all 2025, most of 2024. And that would mean it even followed this mini rally that failed. And that would mean that right now we're in this section of sideways, bleeding, possible up, possible we can come back down a little bit to retest the 40-week moving average. But by the very early parts of May, we will enter this massive uptrend where Bitcoin starts following M2 if the correlation is going to continue. What this would mean for crypto holders, Bitcoin holders, altcoin holders is that we can expect, well, first, we need to see Bitcoin continue to follow M2. It's been doing it for about 2 years, and so there's still a lot of evidence that it's going to continue. If it were to break away, that would be a cause for concern about the total crypto space, right? And if that were to happen, we would see Bitcoin fall below those moving averages and really show us a lot of signs that now is the time to get out. Okay, we're not seeing that. I don't expect we're going to see that. And so because we're not seeing that, I think the best thing that we can do is continue to expect this move to happen. And what this move says is that if we're using the 108-day offset, is that M2 is leading Bitcoin by 108 days. So if you take early May, say May 1st, Bitcoin starts following this upwards trajectory move, that means we have 108 days for Bitcoin to basically go vertical in order to follow M2, and that would put Bitcoin into new all-time high territory. For instance, that would mean that we spend May, June, and July all in a Bitcoin uptrend, right? That's only 90 days. Then we still have an extra 10 or 20 days, depending on how much longer M2 continues to go higher. M2 is offset by Bitcoin by 100 days or 70 days, whichever one you like to do. It's offset by that much, but that's not saying that M2 stops going up. In fact, over the last, couple months here, you can see basically 3 or 4 months, M2 has continued to put in new all-time highs. And so if M2 continues to put in new all-time highs after the summer, we can continue to expect Bitcoin to continue to follow that correlation and then also continue to put in new all-time highs following the M2 cycle. And so all this means that this week is a very key week for Bitcoin. And I think it's very important to understand that as this Bitcoin price gets above these moving averages, we're actually confirming a lot of bullish sentiment on where Bitcoin price can be going. And as long as Bitcoin stays above this 30-week, we're actually in very bullish territory. It's called stage analysis if you like to look a little bit further. But what I want to see is Bitcoin get above the moving average like it has very beautifully, and then next week maintain above the 30-week moving average. So something like that would look like this. We have this 30-week moving average that's coming across here. We have this 40-week that's coming across here. Bitcoin needs to get up here. The next week needs to stay up here. Then the next week after that needs to stay up here, right? It needs to maintain and even crank higher above these moving averages, right? That is the key thing that Bitcoin needs to do in order to maintain bullish and stay out of those bear market talks, no matter what's going on in the news. Another thing I'd like to point your attention to as we look at this is the Bitcoin risk indicators. And I think that this is very important because it shows us, I think it's been very helpful for me in my analysis this whole cycle on Cardano, on Bitcoin, on everything. And it's really showing us that this is a good time to be in these assets. Let's look at it here. This is the 2017 cycle. You can see as Bitcoin rose through the cycle, it got to this point where it was very, very overbought, very risky to continue to hold, and that's kind of where the top was. Throughout 2021, we had the same thing. We had this cycle where you can see we have this first top, we're all in these orange and yellow areas, but as we move into pink and red, it's time to sell your Bitcoin. This would have told you it's time to sell your Bitcoin in March, that first cycle top that we had, and not the second one, which I think would have been a perfectly fine bet. Today, we're not really seeing any of that. Compared to where Bitcoin has been, compared to all the other assets out there, compared to what is going on, we're only at about a 5 risk level. I think this indicator goes up to 12. And so we're only at about half of the risk, and we're nowhere near really the yellow, the pink, or the red. You can see back here in March of 2024, we did get a little bit into the orange, but right now, Bitcoin as a function of risk compared to its previous cycles, compared to all the indicators out there that are looking at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is not a risky asset. So I really like how we're lining this up with M2, how, M2 is kind of a narrative, but I really like how Bitcoin is getting above the 30-week moving average. And then because it's getting above the 30-week moving average, we're having these narratives of M2, right? And M2 is really lining up with Bitcoin. And then because of that, we're also having these risk indicators, which are showing no risk or medium risk compared to high risk. And so we still have a lot of potential this cycle to have a very good Bitcoin and crypto bull market based on these numbers. Now, with all that being said, I don't think Bitcoin's going to go put in, I really don't think Bitcoin's going to put in an all-time high during the summer, okay? What might happen is May, June, July continues upwards, maybe even August, but maybe in like late July or August or September, we have a correction month or a correction period. This will kind of fall in line with what we've seen in Bitcoin in previous cycles. We have good moves up, right? We have good moves up. And typically see in here, we have a summer lull. This was May and June where we had this lull. And then we also had one in September in the 2021 cycle. I think this time might be a little different where we get a May and June that are positive because of this M2 talk. But maybe later in the fall or early in the fall, later in the summer, we do get a lull, whether it be August, whether it be September. You can see last cycle we had a down week, a down lull here in September, a down lull here in June. And so there's reason to expect another little period of consolidation or a downwards month on the path higher. The reason I mention that is because Bitcoin also really tops out before M2 tops out. And so you can look at this indicator here on TradingView, Finfluential Global M2, and come to your own M2 money supply indicator here, and you can come in here and let's just put in 108 days. I like that one, it's pretty good. But on the total, when we kind of push it out and then we're going to go to the daily chart to line it up, you can see how M2 is lining up with Bitcoin pretty well here. The thing about it though is that when you really push these out, you can see how Bitcoin does top out a little bit before some of the other peaks, right? And then you can see this in the 2021 cycle as well, how, yeah, there's this peak here, but there's also this peak here. And Bitcoin actually topped out a little bit before this, actually kind of about, 200-ish days before M2 totally topped out for that cycle. And then they did fall back in line together. And then it looks like they're kind of getting back up again. And so Bitcoin, maybe because it's a riskier asset, because it's, you can see it here too, Bitcoin topping out a little bit before that M2 cycle. And so maybe Bitcoin and M2 are getting a little bit more correlated as it matures, but I would not be surprised to see Bitcoin top out before M2. And so we see M2 continue on for 5 months, maybe Bitcoin before it's, doing a little retrace and resetting a little bit, maybe Bitcoin goes for 3 months and then retraces, right? All of this is to really say, I think Bitcoin is on the path to a summer rally by following the Bitcoin, or by following the global money supply, and because it is durably getting above this 30-week moving average that we have right here. To me, that's a very good sign. I love the 30 and 40-week moving averages, and I like this sign that Bitcoin's doing by getting above. We need to see a couple weeks further to see if Bitcoin continues up this path, maybe breaking a new all-time high, which would be a great sign of continued acceleration. But I'm seeing a lot of indicators line up that Bitcoin's going to have a good summer, whether it be May, June, July. Maybe in August or September, we get a retrace, we get a pullback, depending if M2 pulls back or if it's seasonality. Sometimes in that early fall, Bitcoin will pull back. But regardless of what the news is saying, the tariffs, the recession, the fear, all the things that people might be talking about, I think Bitcoin could be primed to have a good couple of weeks or a couple of months here in the summer. But and I do still think that the crypto cycle is intact. And so what I'll be watching is, how does Bitcoin play with this moving average? How does it play with M2? How do these things keep going? And does the cycle continue on as we expect? Then as we move later into the year, maybe, if all of these things are still lining up in like September, October, November, then is M2 continuing to go higher and Bitcoin kind of stalling out? And is the asset getting riskier? I think that'd be a great thing to look at. I still think that we can kind of target this move right here. I think this is one last interesting thing to line up here, is that when we had this retracement for Bitcoin, it kind of went up about 90%. It kind of went up about 90%. And so if we were going to repeat the same thing from 2024, this was in 2024, now we're in 2025, having a retrace, cutting into the moving averages, kind of really similar to right here. If we were going to have the same thing happen and Bitcoin was going to come up here, about 90-ish%, that would put us right at around $150,000 for Bitcoin. I think that this is interesting because it's kind of right in the zone where I think we could see Bitcoin top out. I don't know an exact number of where Bitcoin's going to top out, but when we do a trend-based Fibonacci extension, it kind of puts Bitcoin between like a 130 to a $180,000 price range. And that's kind of what I think would be reasonable to expect from Bitcoin this cycle. Let's look here. So you can see how when Bitcoin came up, it came right to around this 1.618 level, around $117,000. I think that we could see Bitcoin come at the maximum to up around $180,000, but $150,000 would put Bitcoin right around here, which seems highly reasonable. It kind of got close to the 1.618 without getting there in the recent rally that we had in June, and then kind of putting it right around that $150,000 level would kind of be about the same move. It would put price right around here. And if we look back cycle over cycle, Bitcoin typically will make its way all the way up to the 3.618 and the 2.618, and it seems like it's kind of diminishing cycle over cycle. So I think this area would be a great spot to target around 140, 150, at the maximum 180,000 for Bitcoin this cycle. That's what I'm watching. I still think that there's a lot of reasons to be bullish on the asset class. I know It might sound a little weird to a lot of people, but this move was a big move by Bitcoin this week. I want to continue to watch the week play out because it's only like Tuesday, and we need to see how Bitcoin plays with these moving averages in M2. But if Bitcoin continues to follow M2 as it has, we could expect a very good summer rally over the next 3 months. Basically, whether you use 70 days or 100 days, we're at least going to get 70 days out of it. So maybe May and June, maybe May and June, July, but something of that nature. If you're watching the video, if you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and subscribe. In the description, we have the Crypto 100x blueprint, and we're talking about a lot of good stuff down there, like trading, using stage analysis, a lot of interesting things. So that's all I got for you today. Hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll definitely see you in the next one.